Arc 7 Chapter 32 The Way Forward. Priscilla, how much time will it take just to bring back one ordinary fool? Do you think that the value of time flowing between you and me is the same? Al, no, that's why I'm apologizing to you. Greeted by her lord's cold gaze, Al bowed his head in a sullen manner. As soon as he returned to the conference hall with Subaru, the aforementioned reprimand awaited him. The original purpose of his mission was to bring Subaru back to the meeting hall, so it was not unreasonable for him to be scolded for having an unplanned conversation. Not unreasonable, but, Subaru, Priscilla, please don't blame Al too much. It's not Al who's at fault, it's me, Priscilla. I'm sure the two clowns were consoling each other over some trivial anguish. Your forehead is red. Did you bang it against the wall or something? Subaru, do you have clairvoyance? You're so spot on it's scary. Priscilla shot back at Subaru, who had come to Al's defense, with a comment that she had seen before. The scene was not so common that such a scene would have come to mind, but Priscilla's insight made him shudder. Anyway, Subaru, it's not like you all are going to stop talking without us. Priscilla, it's not easy to come to a conclusion. After all, you're Abel's military strategist. Subaru, that's. Priscilla's narrowed gaze caught Subaru's attention and he stared at Abel. In response to his gaze, Abel, who had taken his seat, crossed his arms and silenced Subaru's pursuit. Abel must have been unhappy with the way he treated Subaru as a military strategist, but since he had said so directly to Priscilla, he could not retract it. As a result, they could not conclude the meeting without Subaru. Subaru, aren't you going to choke yourself by saying things without thinking? Abel, you're the one who needs to watch the quality of your words. Any good strategy can be treated as either wise or foolish, depending on how you choose your words. Subaru, you're regretting treating me like a military strategist. That's some nerve. Frowning at Abel's officious answer, Subaru sighed deeply. He then looked around at the people in the meeting room. Abel, Priscilla, Zikr, and Talitha, who had taken over as chief, and closed one eye. Without Subaru and Al, they didn't think they could have reached the conclusion. Subaru, the conclusion you haven't reached is about cooperating with Priscilla. Earlier, you said that Priscilla had someone working with her. Abel, you seem to have the brains to keep up. Of course, I'm talking about that. The one who takes more of the 9 divine generals wins. Remember? Subaru, yeah, I got to the part where one is a pain in the ass for being useless. If they are unclaimed and become assassins, they will be untouchable, and if they are recovered, they will not contribute much to the situation. If this were a simulation game, it would be a troublesome unit. It's a unit that has little value to its allies and is poisonous if left to their enemies. Subaru, but it's about the final victory. It's not about Priscilla and her support of her collaborators, right? Priscilla : Priscilla made a small sound in her throat as Subaru summarized the story deftly. For a moment, Priscilla's red eyes flashed with a look of curiosity that seemed unusual in Subaru's eyes, a reaction that suggested that she was interested in someone else. Even Subaru, there was nothing special about it, Subaru thought. Subaru, what the hell? Priscilla, no, I thought you looked deflated in that guise. But you've come back with a new complexion and eye color. On top of that, your blood circulation is a little better, so you look a little different. Subaru, compliments. Huh? Priscilla, you can jump for joy if you want. Subaru, I won't go that far. The fact that she didn't deny it must be a compliment in Priscilla's own way. While sniffling, Subaru accepted the praise for his change of heart. Rem's words of support for Natsuki Subaru were denied. However, he was encouraged that this was not the time to bend the knee to it. Subaru, well, if that's the case, then it was worth being late for the meeting. Priscilla, I see, the result of a conversation between clowns. You're being so uncharacteristically accommodating. Al, hey, it's not like it's uncharacteristic to take a nice guy like me and be nice to someone. Princess. Priscilla made fun of him, and Al shrugged his shoulders as he replied. Subaru can't decide whether Priscilla's words or Al's were correct. For Subaru, Al was the only person from his homeland, and the one who patted him on the back and pushed him out of a dead-end situation. It was true that his image was not without its unsympathetic side, as he has been harsh to him elsewhere, and any situation was treated as something else. Subaru, it's forgivable if you think of it as an after-effect of spending so much time in a different world. Al, is it my imagination or you said something rude right now? Al tilted his head in a way not making any sense of Subaru's words, but he let it slide. What was important was neither the fact that Priscilla had changed her mind about Subaru, nor the fact that Al had contributed to the change of heart. Abel, what we need to do is settle the debate, and see how Priscilla is willing to deal with us in the future. Let's not go off topic. Subaru, oh, I'm sorry that someone who gets sidetracked so easily became a military strategist. When Abel narrowed his eyes grimly in response to the sarcasm, Subaru stuck out his tongue and let it pass. Then he turned to Priscilla once again and urged her to continue the conversation. Subaru, so, what are you going to do, with or without the support of Priscilla and her collaborators? I'm sure Abel is still going to hit the imperial capital. Al, with or without the princess's support, the degree of the assault will be the same. Priscilla, it's great that you clowns are so in tune with each other. Anyway, your assessment is correct. Therefore, I have made a condition that you must show me that you are worthy of my support in the future when I assist you. Abel, Subaru, conditions? Priscilla, it's simple. One of the 9 divine generals must be on your side. To Subaru's frowning face, Priscilla presented the conditions in a matter-of-fact manner. When Subaru heard the conditions, he muttered 9 divine generals in his mouth. It was not an absurd condition. In the first place, if you want to challenge the battle to regain the throne, it is a prerequisite to acquire many 9 divine generals, and Priscilla is looking for that first step. In fact, it would be a very tasty condition if he could get Priscilla on my side just by fulfilling the prerequisites for victory. Subaru, it's not exactly a condition to be jumping up and down about, is it? Abel, of course, as long as I don't know whether Gaz is safe or not. There's no 9 divine generals who would follow me unconditionally, and there aren't many eccentrics who would want to take the trouble to fight a losing battle. Subaru, if you don't see even a small chance of winning, no one will come on board. As Abel described the tragic situation. Subaru also wrinkled his brow with a difficult expression. Abel's sad self-awareness. If the Emperor's prestige was no match for the 9 divine generals, he wanted Priscilla and her collaborators' support as much as he could get it. At the very least, the presence of such a collaborator would have been a bargaining chip to persuade the 9 divine generals. At this point, Abel had only a few things to go on. His big claim that he was the real Emperor, the people of Shadra, and the military strength of the citadel city of Garel. Subaru, I wonder if they'll listen to us when we say we'll fight the Empire with 1 city and 1 tribe. Abel, those working with Priscilla would have been a good bargaining chip if their names were above middle rank. Priscilla, I tell you, do not expect mercy from me. I have a certain amount of generosity, but it's not for beggars. Priscilla, with her cheekbones, easily trampled our feeble hopes. As we knew, there was no way she was going to change her opinion. Then, all they had to do was to challenge the conditions presented to them in a straightforward manner. Zykel, with all due respect, my lord, perhaps we should turn to General Sisilus for help. Subaru, Zykel-san, what are the odds? When a heavy silence was about to fall, expectations were placed on Zykel, who said so. However, in response to Subaru's expectant gaze, Zykel shook his head and said, Zykel, as you said earlier, given the current strength, anyone who thinks about cooperating with us is not a straight thinker. Therefore, Subaru, Zykel, I'm afraid we can only rely on people with less than straightforward thinking, like General Sisilus. Subaru, oh, so Zykel-san thinks that person is crazy, too. Sisilus, who has only a dismal reputation, is hardcore enough to think that Zykel could be brought to his side because of his craziness. However, if we really have no other choice, we may have to go for the first nasty unit we have to think about bringing into our side eventually. Subaru, the question is, where is he? Where does that person usually live? Abel, that one usually lives in Arakia's house in the imperial capital. Subaru, I see, Arakia's. Wait, why? It was said flatly, and Subaru's understanding of Abel's words was delayed for a few seconds. Even Priscilla frowned in displeasure at the outlandishness of the content. From what he had heard, 1 is Sisilus and 2 is Arakia. Subaru, does that mean that the Sisilus guy and Alacia are lovers or something? If that was the case, Subaru and the others who had defeated Arakia would have made a far worse impression. Subaru and his team had successfully made enemies of both 1 and 2. However, Abel shook his head in response to Subaru's question. No, he said. Abel, no, it's not. Arakia is looking for an opportunity to kill Sisilus, but he can't do that if the people around him are harmed every time he tries to kill him. That is why I ordered Sisilus to do it. Subaru, ordered what? Abel, I told him to stay in a place where Arakia would have an easy time anyway. Subaru, I see. Even with a concrete explanation, the relationship was difficult for Subaru to understand. He didn't understand the mentality of letting his own generals kill each other, and he also didn't understand the idea of living in the house of someone who would try to kill him accordingly. In the first place, Subaru, how can you live with someone who wants to kill you? After he said that, he felt as if he had said something strange, but he couldn't find the answer to that strange feeling, and Subaru quickly forgot his question. Anyway, the fact that Sisilus usually lived in the Imperial City was now known. Subaru, so, the only way to get Sisilus on our side is to go to the Imperial capital. Hey, are you sure you're okay to go all the way to the Imperial capital? Abel, no, of course not. I don't even know if Sisilus is still in the Imperial capital. Subaru, then you're out of luck, aren't you? The Volocca Empire, even when it comes to military matters, Subaru's knowledge is useless. However, since Zykel, who is also one of the officers, was the first to suggest it, it was considered to be one of the better ideas that could be taken at present. If that idea is rejected, Abel's path is bleak. Subaru, this is not the time to be stomping around here. A dark and heavy feeling began to assert itself in Subaru's chest. It's like a bittersweet stagnation, a lump of helplessness that wouldn't go away even if he banged his head against the wall, a kind of after effect that made Rem give up on Subaru. Because of this, Subaru has lost the trust of Rem. He had to get rid of this Lise as soon as possible and regain her trust. In order to do so, every second of the time he spent stomping his feet was precious. Abel, there's a way. But Abel's words stifled Subaru's teeth gnashing as he did so. Abel turned to face Subaru, who looked up as if he had been hit, with one eye closed, and said, Abel, stop that poor face you are tired of seeing. I have a hand. Subaru, I'm sorry, but my face was the limit of the character makeup I could make without paying for it. I don't care about such a rich or poor face. What do you mean there is a way? Abel, it was Zyg's idea. I'll adopt some of it. Zykel, some of my ideas. I'd be honored. But that's, frowning his thick eyebrows, Zykel was confused when he hears that his opinion has been adopted. Subaru was just as confused as Zykel. In the first place, Zyg's idea was to recruit Sisilus the One. As long as they couldn't go to the Imperial capital, they would have to reject that idea, and he didn't think there was any other use for it. To Subaru, who thought so, Abel snorts. Abel, I don't have a chance to talk to Sisilus, but Zykel told me. He told me that if there's someone else who's not straight thinker, there's a possibility. Zykel, no way, my lord, that's dangerous. Please reconsider. Subaru, what? At Abel's bold words, Zyk changed his expression and started to fight back. Zyg's swordsmanship made Subaru's eyes black and white, and he was startled to see what was going on. Zyk seemed to have an idea of what was going on, but it didn't seem to make sense to Subaru. From the way the conversation was going, it seemed that he was trying to talk to someone crazy. But Abel, is there anyone crazier than the unlikable General Sisilus? Zyk, I wouldn't say he's crazy, but that man is too dangerous. Abel, well, I know what you're saying about the Afro General, but the way the story goes, that's one of the 9 divine generals, right? I'm sure you'll be able to figure out what to do with it. It's not a situation where you can pick and choose. Zyk, that's true, but, Subaru and Al spoke to him from both sides, and Zykel shut down with a reluctant face. Seeing the good-natured Zykel suffer made Subaru and the others feel worse. Rather, the problem lies with Abel's personnel management, which had placed people in key positions that Zykel can't help but anguish over. This is an example of how appointing people based on their abilities alone can lead to such tragedies. Subaru, in that respect, Lanaka was running pretty well. Basically, I've never come across a big guy who was a jerk. No, there was an old man who said bad things about Emily at Anne, but, in hindsight, that was also part of a statement made out of excessive fear of the witch of at the time. Subaru was a foolish hero who did not understand such circumstances and took on the challenge equipped only with recklessness. Now, even if he had encountered the same situation, he could have challenged it with better equipment. Of course, he didn't have the option of not challenging someone for Emilia because of her bad reputation. Subaru, so, who is the cause of Zykel-san's suffering, and where is he? Abel, what's with that nonsense? Abel responded to Subaru's question with a resentful look on his face. Abel, to answer your question, it's Yorana Misagura, who is based in the magical city of Kazflame. Subaru, Yorana Misagura. Despite the unfamiliar name of the city, the person's name was familiar to me. Yorana Misagura was one of the 9 divine generals mentioned in the list, and he believed her alias was Subaru, the painted one or something like that. Al, you're good, brother. I don't know how you managed to learn it in one shot. Subaru, I like to memorize the 2 names of executive level characters in manga and such. That said, this Yorana person is Zykel-sans. As he said this, he glanced at Zykel, and Subaru was speechless. Subaru was speechless because Zykel was covering his face with his hands, looking pale. Abel, the 7 of the 9 divine generals, General Yorana Misagura. Subaru, is she that bad? I thought his name was feminine, but if his impression was correct, she would be the woman that Zykel feared, who was known as a womanizer and acted like a gentleman even to Subaru, who was only dressed as a woman. I can't even imagine what kind of special thing is going to come out of her, but Zykel, she is beautiful. I'm sure everyone can agree on that, not just me. However, General Yorana has a little problem, and it's more than a little problem. Al, well, what is the problem? Zykel, treason. Subaru, Al, what? Subaru's and Al's voices overlapped with Zykel's as the words spilled out of his mouth. Zykel covered his face with his hands and continued in a trembling voice, as Subaru was taken aback and doubted his ears that he had heard wrong. Abel, first General Yorana Misagura is a rebel who has rebelled many times and threatened the reign of Emperor Vincent the Volca. Subaru, you can't put someone like that in the position of a general. Subaru's angry voice echoed through the conference hall for the second time. Priscilla, well, it looks like we have a deal. Priscilla opened her fan noisily, thinking that the discussion had been settled after a while of the ridiculous information about the 9 divine generals and Subaru's angry voice. To be honest, Subaru wanted to say something, but, Abel, there is no other choice. As of now, the only one of the 9 divine generals who might join us is Yorana Misagura. Subaru, didn't they rebel against you because they didn't like you in the first place? Zykel, no, actually, that's not entirely true. It's impossible for me, at least, to know what she's thinking. Subaru, if Zykel-san says so much, then it must be so. At the words of the trustworthy Zykel, Subaru had no choice but to retract his doubts, and Abel, hearing this, sniffed disapprovingly. And Abel, what is it with you and your willingness to listen to Zykel's opinion? Subaru, even if it's the same opinion, it's important who said it. Do you think that you have more credibility in my mind than Zykel-san? Abel, I see, but what happens if Zykel dies? Subaru, I'll kill you with a thought experiment. He cursed at Abel for saying something so disturbing. With Zykel's loyalty, if Abel ordered him to do something, he might seriously accept suicide. Subaru was doing everything in his power to prevent such an incident from happening. Anyway, Subaru, aside from being silly, Chaos Frame was. Where is it? Is it far from Geralt? Abel, not so much in terms of location. That's one of the reasons why it's an appropriate place to aim for next. It's located south of here in the southeast. Badheim Jungle. Subaru, I see, indeed. Having been shown the location on the map on the desk, Subaru was also convinced by Abel's explanation. The location of the Chaos Frame is south of the forest where the Shudra people lived. The distance is further than the jungle and Geralt, but it's much more realistic than the Imperial capital or the land further west. Subaru, and then there's why it's called the Demon City. Priscilla, rest assured, common fool, it is not a reason that will crush your little bile. It's a city where many races have lived in chaos since ancient times. Volca has always been home to a wider variety of races than Lunica, but the Chaos Flame is a particularly eclectic mix. Subaru, chaos, so it's a magical city. As soon as he started to say it, the fact that the city was called Chaos and the word chaos was attached to it made a lot of sense. It's probably just a coincidence that it's in another world. Abel, in the Demon City, I will add Yorana Misagura, the 7 of the 9 divine generals, to my army. I'm sure you'll be able to open your chest. When that happens, Priscilla, that's fine. I am very generous. I'm not going to add conditions after this. Subaru, I thought you said something about generosity being out of stock earlier. No, it's nothing. When Priscilla glared at him, Subaru immediately retracted his unnecessary remark. And so, once our policy was decided correctly, Abel, please take me with you. Subaru, Talitha-san. Suddenly, Talitha stood up and pleaded with Abel. Talitha had been seated in place of Kana during the meeting, but she had never opened her mouth before. She was probably confused by the fact that she had to suddenly take over as chief, but even now, her face, as she stared at Abel, showed a deep sense of urgency. In response to her plea, Abel's dark eyes narrowed. Abel, what are you doing? You have inherited the title of Shudrat Chief from your sister. Regardless of your confidence, it will not be shaken. Talitha, I know. You can't refuse the position that my sister has given to me, but I am not strong enough to lead the clan or the Shudra. Looking down, Talitha bit her lip and stared at her hands. In her empty hands, she clutches what is probably the same thing that Subaru held in his heart, the sense of helplessness that torments him. Talitha, I need a chance to carry the position of chief with pride. Abel, that's what you need. Is that what you're looking for on your way to the Chaos Flame? Talitha, yes, I do. Is it not good, right? Talitha's voice lost some of its power, as if she had lost confidence in herself after saying that. However, Subaru could understand the anxiety that Talitha was feeling, and what it really was. After the sudden change of chiefs, Talitha was forced to play a major role, but she was not sure if she was strong enough for the role. In other words, what she was looking for is a success story where she could admit to herself that she had accomplished enough to convince herself. It was the same thing that Subaru was looking for right now. Subaru, Abel, I agree too. I don't think even Talitha-san would be able to follow in my Zelda-san's footsteps with such a mindset. Abel, Subaru. Besides, we're going to need an escort or ally along the way anyway, right? We know what Teretsu-san is capable of. We're friends who rode into town together in women's clothing. Talitha, Natsumi. He paraphrased in the middle, but he said what he wanted to say. Talitha looked very impressed by Subaru's decision to side with her. He felt her pain. He could feel it. That's why he wanted to be on her side. Abel, if you pull out, what about Shadra? Talitha, let my sister take over for a while. Kana and Holly will be assisting her a lot. We can't move too many people to protect Geralt. Abel, did you at least think about that during your silence? Listening to Talitha's unruffled answer, Abel assessed her thoughts. Then Abel tapped his temple lightly with his finger. Abel, only if you are heading for the Chaos Frame. Of course, as long as I'm meeting with your Anamisiga, my presence is essential. But I'm not going to attack. Abel, the most I can take with me is an escort. Abel, then I'll add you, Talitha. The rest I've heard your story. In the midst of Abel's story, the door was thrown open with great force, and a figure stepped in with authority. It was Flop O'Connell, the good merchant who had unabashedly referred to the Emperor as his new friend, and who had no fear of the impertinence of interrupting the Emperor's words. Flop snorted, holding the gaze of everyone in the room to himself. Flop, Miss Talitha, I'm very impressed with your spirit in volunteering for such a difficult role. I think it's great that you're finding your own way to tackle a big role out of the blue. Talitha, oh, thank you very much. Flop, I would like to make a suggestion to keep you and the village chief safe on the road. I think it would be a good idea to take my sister, Medium, with you. Holding up a finger, Flop asserted forcefully. He almost nodded in agreement with his vigor, but if he examined the content, it was a rather abrupt suggestion. Abel, so, what's in your mind? Yeah, I guess it's a question. Well, let me raise my reasons for recommending Medium. First of all, she's skilled, and she's charming. On top of that, she's smooth. Subaru, smooth. Flop, she speaks pleasantly and clearly, so I'm sure you won't miss his chats on the road. She's not shy, so she can get along with anyone. What do you think? Isn't she a gem? Flop, showing his white teeth, praised his sister, but 2/3 of his confidence selling points referred to Medium's people-pleasing nature, and the only real selling point was that she was skilled. In fact, Subaru has confirmed that this one point does work. Subaru, but, have you talked to Medium-san about it? Flop, no, I haven't. But I'm going to tell her now, so it's okay. Subaru, is this okay? It wasn't a travel consultation or a promise of fun. They were going to be thrown into a life-threatening situation, but would they be able to discuss it later? If this were to cause a rift in the relationship between the siblings, it would indeed be painful for Subaru. However, he was afraid that he could picture them laughing and accepting it. Subaru, assuming that Medium-san is okay with it. Abel, what about you? Abel, I've seen it. I've seen that she's got the right skills. If it does its job, I have no objection. Flop, then you can rest assured. My sister is the one who basically gives her all to whatever she's told to do. But be careful, she doesn't get too worked up if she's not told to. Putting her hands on her hips, Flop laughed gaily. Ha. He laughed gaily. He must have guessed from the way he said it and Abel's attitude. This time, Flop was not included in the group that would accompany them to Chaos Flame. Subaru, beat a broken bar. You won't be able to stay with Medium-san. Flop, don't be silly. Husband-kun, I have a goal. A vengeance that must be done, that must be fulfilled. Subaru, oh, these are the words that spill out of Flop's mouth, but he knows that they are not rude thoughts, but are directed towards unreason and absurdity that even this cheerful Flop cannot tolerate. The goodness of Flop, which Subaru could not hear in this world, that is the reason why Subaru trusts him and has been able to spend time with him until today. Talitha, it's the same with my sister. My sister and I have the same goal and the same path to walk. If I abandoned you, your wife, and the village chief here, I wouldn't be able to hold my chest up anymore. Subaru, I'm going to cry. I'm going to fall in love with you. Flop, ha. That's a gut-wrenching thing to hear from husband-kun in that outfit, but you can't do that because it's bad for your wife. But I'll take your feelings. Even the way he wielded it was cool, and Subaru could only admire it. Perhaps Medium would be willing to follow Flop's words. In other words, one of the members accompanying Chaos Flame was going to be Medium. Flop, Miss Talitha, be good to your sister. Hey, you got along well with me. I'm sure you'll get along well with my sister. Talitha, yes, please take care of yourself too. Flop, yes, I'll do my best with Zytle-san and the rest of Shadra. Flop slapped himself on the chest as Talitha fidgeted and looked down. Flop clapped his hands on his chest, and with a smile on his face, Subaru cleared his throat. Subaru, by the way, I'm leaving you behind. Subaru, what? Abel, did you really think I'd say that? When Subaru tried to confirm, Abel threw a feint of bad taste at him. Even though he was enraged by it, he reacted as if he wanted to be taken away, so Subaru did his best to hold back and kept silent by biting his back teeth. Snickering at Subaru, Abel prefaced his remarks with, unfortunately, though, Abel, you're already a bargain bargaining chip, as long as it is essential for us to include your honor, Mr. We can't talk about it without her. Subaru, I'll definitely punch you in the side of the head when all is said and done, but I'm a bargaining chip. Abel, the fall of Geralt was your idea. The circumstances will soon be known. I'll make sure that happens. Subaru, what? Subaru's eyes flashed black and white, not understanding the meaning of Abel's words. There was no doubt that the fall of the Citadel was Subaru's plan, but he didn't understand the advantage of going to the trouble of making it known. Basically, being underestimated was Natsuki Subaru's starting point. Priscilla, there's something else we can use besides Abel. We'll have to make them think so. It was Priscilla who answered Subaru's question in a straightforward manner. Hearing her words, understanding slowly seeped into Subaru's mind. Abel, of course, it's not just ordinary folks. The people of Shadra in the Badheim jungle, the defenders of the fortified city of Garrel, and General Grossman are also material for negotiations. But the best is, Priscilla, I told you, a military strategist who helped bring down the city. In the Empire, the strong are respected. It's not just about brute force, it's about intelligence as well. Subaru, this is why Natsuki Subaru had value. Abel and Priscilla assured this. To be honest, from Subaru's point of view, it was a very complicated evaluation. On the one hand, it was itchy to be so highly praised, but on the other hand, it also seems to be an excessive evaluation. In fact, in spite of this high valuation, Subaru lost the trust of the Rem and experienced a grumbling underfoot. No matter how highly they are regarded in the Empire, it was nothing to be weighed against Rem's trust. For this reason, Subaru's heart was not moved by Abel and the others' evaluation. However, Subaru, if I'm useful, I'm good. Use it well. In return, you can use Abel. In return, Subaru, you'll definitely get your emperorship back, and you'll get us back safely. Subaru firmly stated that this was the only thing he would not compromise. Hearing this, Abel's eyes widened lightly, and then he let out a long breath. Abel, I don't need to be told. That's what I'm supposed to do. And so he answered,